Okay, so the game is Twilight Imperium. Nice huge box. I've set it up already. For those of you who aren't familiar with my treatments of games, and I suspect there might be quite a few of such because I haven't touched a lot of the Ameritrash games, or for that matter the Euro games. I've mainly focused on my war games. And this is, obviously one of the big, top entrants into its field. You may see something a little different than you're used to. This isn't going to be, an explanation of the rules in detail or just a review, and there's certainly not going to be anything flashy in this. You're going to see this board here, you're going to see me playing, and I'll go a little bit into the rules just to help remind myself, because this is an absolute first look at the game for me. And one of the things that I immediately note, I've read the rules, and I say, wow, this is as interesting looking a game as people had convinced me it was going to be. However, it's got all these damn plastic pieces, which I feel, could have been easier visualizing with regular cardboard counters. However, for a good enough game, I'll put up with plastic pieces, and this may well be such a game. Alright, the setup of the game is one of the first things. This one planet, Mercatol Rex, which affects a number of these objective cards, not just the secret ones, I assume, but also the public ones, making it a real goal. It's the old center of the empire, and a lot of legitimacy is inherent in it. Now, it's got two values. One, this is sort of a production type value, and the second one is the political power of holding that planet. Each of the planets has its own little card, which contains those values, and kind of like in Magic, well, you tap the card by flipping it over, as it were, which indicates that you've used its resources in one sense or another. Now, the actual resources are used that way. I'm not sure how much the influence is used that way, because when it comes to votes, it's just whatever untapped planets you have, I think, count towards your voting. Look at a couple of the things on the board. First of all, one thing to note, as always, when I play a game, and yeah, I had to extend over to here because this thing has a huge footprint. I'm playing the long version of the game, which has got 4 extra victory points to it, and some extra cards, could last a little longer. I'm also playing with a couple of options, the Distant Suns option, which adds a bit of chance in when you explore a planet. You may not just get it or whatever. When you land on it, you may have to fight something, you may be destroyed, something horrible may happen, whatever. And that sounded more interesting to me. And also these leaders who have certain abilities that kind of match with the races. Now, the game comes with 10 races. The base game is meant to be played in 6, although there are optional rules to play with as little as 3 players. Anyway, those leaders affect different sides of things. Like, you have military leaders, admirals and generals, you have scientists, you have diplomats, you have spies. They all have a special ability which they can use, but they're kind of vulnerable as well. There's some special red zone. The yellow surrounded areas are the home planets of the country, of the different races. And like I said, there's 4 more races in the game that we're not even playing with. And each of these comes with, I'd flip one of these over to show you, a detailed explanation and background story for the race. Not necessary to play the game, but definitely adds a lot of flavor to what's going on and makes me a lot happier, even if I don't completely know them very well. I know them better than I know the rules or the specific advantages of each race, but I'm kind of going to use them to guide me through the races. Okay, what else do we have? We have these special red bordered places, which are generally navigational hazards more than anything else. Asteroid fields, you can't move through them without a certain technology. The supernova, I believe, although the rules aren't completely clear on this, is completely impassable. You can't land on it, blah, blah, blah. The nebula, you can enter, but you can't pass through. And once you're in it, you can only move one space coming out. Just some little terrain to add to the board. As well, you'll see there's empty spaces. There's different planets. These are wormholes, which make two areas adjacent to each other. Somebody was kind of dicky putting them together. We got another set here and here. There's, I think, two counters that aren't, two hex tiles that aren't in the game, other than the 4 home planets of the races that aren't in the game. I immediately start thinking, oh, can I play this in more than 6? Maybe, maybe not. I want to try it in its legitimate play size before I do that. Victory conditions are getting victory points. Now, victory points in general seem to come from these objective cards, but there's another way to get them. If you have the initiative card, what do you get? Now, if you have the Imperial, one of these cards gives you a couple of victory points. Yeah, the Imperial gives you 2 victory points per turn that you can grab it. Now, that's very valuable, and what I've been advised is that sort of the general strategy is someone will grab the initiative card so that they get first pick next turn, and then they'll take the Imperial, and you'll have people doing that regularly. I don't see a necessary problem with that, but we'll see how it plays out. I know that got fixed in one of the expansions, and there are a couple of expansions to this. This is already a huge and detailed game as it stands for something that's not, you know, your common classified war game. Okay. Take a look at what the actual play of a turn is, and I have to keep the rules down here rather than on the table where I usually have them. The rule book is, as you see, kind of glossy and a little large. It makes it a little more difficult for someone like me to read and understand as easily, but I found it fairly clear. It's not a great reference manual so far, though. Okay. You know, it's got pictures and no case numbers or anything like that I'm used to. So, there's basically 3 actions in each round. And the first one is the strategy phase. And in that, what happens is each player picks one of these cards. And that starts with the speaker player, who's determined randomly at the beginning of the game. I think from then on, it's going to go... Yeah, it goes in clockwise order from then on. So, that's not a terribly, you know, there's not a factor in mind. So, for example, the guy who picks the Imperial may not get boned out of taking initiative next time. If you get seating in the right order, it could actually be a problem that way. Whereas I would almost want the ordering to be based on these numbers. The numbers on these are your turn ordering in the play of the game, as far as I can tell. Again, I'm not really trying to give you the specifics of the rules, just my feel, and I'll probably make a lot of mistakes here. So, in part, this is to help me understand, as well as to give this first impression. I'll be going through a lot more as I'm actually playing the game. Okay, so the next thing is the tactical actions. I'm sorry, not the tactical actions. The action phase. In the action phase, you get to choose one of a set of different actions, which, and this is sort of the meat of the game, which come down to the following: strategic, tactical, transfer, and pass. Strategic action is triggering the pick that you made out of these. Now, there's 8 of these. as many as 6 can, well, 1 per player will be played. So in this game, 6 will be played. There's these little, somewhere in here, you'll see bonus markers. For whichever actions aren't picked, you put a bonus marker on them, and then if they get picked later, what are they worth, 1 or 2? I don't know. They're worth victory points. I don't know how many. No, they're not. I'm sorry. They're worth either a trade good or a command counter as your bonus. So if something is kind of a bad pick, you can get counters, and these are important, these are your command counters, that will help you elsewhere in the game. Now, I don't know where the trade goods are. There they are. They look like the little stacked boxes. Okay. So, if something is not desirable for its power at any particular time, it can gain in value, and it won't be worth the victory points that, say, the Imperial option is, but it is worth something to whoever picks it if it's been delayed long enough. What about the other actions? Well, the tactical action allows you essentially to take... well, let me go a little more into the strategy action. So the strategy cards have 2 options on them. And that's a bad choice. That one doesn't have a strategy action. Initiative doesn't give you one. It has a primary ability which the person who picked it gets from triggering it. And that should probably be stronger, but I'm not really used to it. And then it's got a secondary option which other players can take by spending a chip from their strategy pool. Now, you start off with a pile, actually only 2 usually, but this race has a special ability where it has 3 to begin with. You start off with a pile of these, but, you know, you've got 4, maybe 5 different actions that you can jump in on that other people played. So you have to kind of make your decision which ones are important to you on each turn out of what's going to be played, and how you want to take advantage of them. Okay, so that's the strategy action in general. The tactical action, you pick a system and you mark that with something out of your command pool to indicate, not that, to indicate that you're going to activate stuff going into that region, sort of. And that allows you to move fleets that are within range into that hex, and it also allows you to trigger production in that hex if you wish. I think only your own production. I'm not sure about that. I hope only your own. And if you have the ability to produce there, then you get, then you can build stuff there. And you build stuff by firing off your planetary cards and taking the resource value from them in order to produce more ships or something else. Okay, and then we have the transfer action, which triggers two planets, 2 system hexes in the same fashion, except I think you pay only, well, I think you pay a command pool chip, and you draw an unused one for the other system, and then you can transfer goods between them, and you're allowed to produce in one of them. The tactical allows you to actually conduct battles, etc., and invade an area. Not strategic. The transfer is just really meant to allow you to do transfers between 2 planets where you wouldn't normally maybe want to pay a whole chit for both actions. It's just, you know, if you have 2 things behind the lines. The final thing that you can do is pass. But once you do that, you're done for the turn. You don't get to fire off any other actions. So when you look here, you say, but there's a pile of pieces here. What's that? That's your fleet supply. That's the maximum number of capital ships you can have in any one system. So for example, this guy, and maybe he's a bad choice, I'm not sure. Somebody has, nah, he's fine. So he has 3 ships. That means he's allowed 3 ships, and he has 1 carrier and 1 dreadnought, and these are the only capital ships he has. These are ground troops, this is a planetary defense base, this is a ship dock, and these are little fighters that don't count against those limits. The only things that count against them are destroyers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, and Death Stars, basically. Okay. What else do you have here? Well, you have piles of technological cards. Everybody's got a deck of tech cards that's exactly the same. The difference in it is that different players have different starting tech. But you have to follow, and there's a reference here, this tech tree, and there's certain prerequisites to go from one to another. Some of the planets give you certain bonuses towards buying different techs, and the techs are bought in general using the actions. There's also the strategic actions. There's also action cards, which I have no idea what they're like, but you can get them somehow, presumably among other places from the strategic actions, and they should allow you to have special opportunities to do stuff in the game. It also may be possible that the Distant Suns give you action cards. Again, I haven't looked too carefully at these things. I kind of want to be surprised. I like doing that. Okay, the political action triggers political cards which cause a vote to occur on whether or not a particular political action card, whatever, takes effect. And that voting is done using the influence, but only the influence of unexpended planets. And there may be other things that jump into this, and again, we'll let them show up as they do. What else? Is there anything else I really want to talk about? Yeah, let's talk about things like combat. Combat here is done. Each race has its own stats for its ships. And that's how many dice that they roll, how much they cost, and how far they can move. Those can be modified by the technologies that you have, perhaps. The actual rolls... no, that's not dice. Sorry. You roll dice per ship. The number in the battle is what you have to roll equal to or higher than in order to get hits on things. A couple of the bigger things, the Dreadnoughts and the Death Stars, or whatever they're called, War Suns, end up taking 2 hits, so they can be damaged once, and then they can be repaired kind of for free in between after a full combat is done. Land combat is done very similarly. There's a difference, though. You can retreat from space combat. Once you're in land combat, you're locked in it and you're stuck fighting. There's all kind of rules for bombarding the planets, dealing with the planetary defense systems, all kind of stuff like that. I can't really go into it all. It's just, it's a rich game with all of this information in it. Okay, and yeah, maybe I covered some things more than I should have, and others less than I should have. But that sucks, right? Just flipping through the rules to see if there's anything. Oh, fighters, I should go into them very briefly. Fighters and ground forces have to be carried in order to travel through space. In general, you carry them in a carrier ship, although the War Suns can also carry them, and they carry 6 stuff. Those can be a combination of different types of units. The ground units have to be landed on ground to be of value in fighting, but the fighters are able to just fly out and fight wherever they end up. You don't have to worry about deploying them. They don't get destroyed when their ship's destroyed, although they have to meet certain basing requirements within their system at all times except during combat, which means I think it's 3 for a space dock. They can 6 on a carrier. If you're over that in the system, then you have to destroy the excess fighters. There's also some counters which cover ground troops and fighters. And those are just excesses because there's an unlimited supply of them. Everything else is limited by your counter mix, i.e. you have this bag of plastic, and if you run out of something, well, you can't build any more of that. But with fighters and ground troops, you can. Okay, now let's see what else we got here. Anything exciting that I haven't done? Sabotage runs, that's a special rule we're also playing with. that allows, if somebody puts a War Sun out there, you can use fighters and do, you know, a Luke versus the Death Star type thing where you fly one fighter down into the gun barrel and kill it. Cool stuff, you know. I think that's about it. So let me discuss the different strategy cards very lightly. The initiative strategy. Because this is the big thing you do in each turn. So the initiative strategy, all that does is it gives you the speaker token, which gives you the first pick of strategy cards in the next strategy phase. It also allows its owner to execute the secondary ability of other strategy cards without spending a command counter. That's pretty cool, actually. That means you can do everything that you want to do off other people's counters without spending. Now, why is spending a big deal? Well, you have this limited quantity of counters. You're allowed to rearrange these, I believe, during the status phase, which is the end of the turn, sort of a cleanup. All your cards get flipped over, etc. You're allowed to set these up how you think you're going to need them for the next turn. But that means, you know, remember, you're spending these whenever you take secondary actions. You're spending these whenever you attack a planet or do any movement or anything. Only the fleet supply stays alone. And very quickly, I think you might find that you're out of counters. So the initiative looks like it gives you a big, an ability to use all the secondary abilities on the strategies without having to play one. For diplomacy, what can you do? You name an opponent. For the remainder of the phase, neither you nor that opponent may activate a system containing units of the other player. Now, in order to invade someone, you have to activate one of their systems. This prevents you and that player from invading one another. The secondary is to spend a command counter from the strategy allocation, which is what you normally do there, and you get up to 2 of your planets become unexhausted if they're already exhausted, allowing you to use their production again, for example. The political strategy allows the owner, well, first of all, it gives the owner 3 action cards. That's a nice little pile of those. Well, there's one way you can get those. And they get a command counter from their reinforcements, which I think, I don't know where it goes. Does it go? Okay, it doesn't say where it goes, so maybe they get to choose where they put it. It also allows you to pick the top card off the political deck and resolve its agenda, i.e. you go to a vote on that. After completing that agenda, you draw the top 3 cards of the political deck, read them, and then stack them. You put the top one on top. You put one of them of your choice on top of the deck, so you get to pick what the next agenda is, and then you place the rest of them on the bottom of the deck, burying them. The secondary ability there is people can play their strategy command counter to draw an action card. Okay. How about logistics? That's the number 4 ability here. And that one, you get 4 command counters from your reinforcements. Again, I assume you can place them where you like, inside your pools. The secondary ability is you can spend influence to receive command counters from your reinforcements. You get 1 command counter for every 3 influence you spend. Now, spending influence, as opposed to using it to vote, is done the same way as spending money. You flip your card over and you get, 0, that's not going to help. You get that much influence to spend on an activity. In this case, you're spending your influence to get command cards. Okay, what about the trade ability? That's the 5th one here. Primary ability? Okay, you get 2 choices. You either get 3 trade goods, which just go in this pile here, and they're treated kind of like money. You can spend them as resource points, but they're also something you can trade, and that between people. You can make deals and move them around. That's a huge bonus, because normally what you produce on your planets is just spend it or lose it. You don't get any change back. Okay, so you can get 3 trade goods. Then you receive trade goods from all your active trade agreements. We'll get into those in a moment. And then you're allowed to open trade negotiations among all players. You have the right to approve all trade agreements, which means you can hold their agreements hostage. Now, there's special abilities in all these cases. In this case, the Emirates of Hakan can always cut trade deals. No, they don't have to get approval from the guy who picked the trade option. Okay? Option B is that you can cancel all trade agreements. Normally, trade agreements are only canceled by people going to war with one another. The secondary ability is to spend a command counter from your strategy pool. And note one thing, only the logistics option doesn't involve spending a command counter. And you get trade goods from your active trade agreements. So how do trade agreements work? Okay, well, I cut a deal, if I'm a player, with another player, and I give him one of these trade agreement cards. And now this produces, every time that he has a right to produce his trade goods, either if he picks the trade option or if he buys into the secondary, it gives him that many trade goods in his little pool. This guy doesn't like to trade. He's got 2 ones. Other people really like to trade. And let's see who we have here. The Hakan are the traders of the game. And look, they give you 3 each. So people really want to cut deals with them. Why do they want to cut deals when they're giving more than everyone else? Well, they get a bonus of +1 for every trade agreement that they have. Note one thing though, these are reciprocal. You have to find someone who will cut a deal and take your card, and they'll give you a card. That means whoever you cut the deal with, you're only allowed 2 of these because you have 2 cards. So you have to make wise choices there. I'm going to load this one, or take a brief break, and then combine this with the next one. We'll hit the rest of the abilities, though. Okay, so here we are back. Yeah, it won't seem like as much of a change to you. We're on the warfare option. Wow. You immediately get a command counter from the board and put it back in your command pool. That doesn't sound very tremendous here. I mean, yes, you get another action, but I don't know. Alright, well, they suggest it's extremely flexible and powerful. Allows you to move a system, to activate a system twice, move a fleet twice, etc. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'm not terribly impressed with it. Although, definitely, if you have a very powerful fleet, using it twice could be a big deal. Or if you have a big economy, hitting it, charging it up twice could be valuable. Alright, the secondary ability is patrols. You spend a command counter from your strategy allocation area, where you always spend for these things, and you get to choose 1 or 2 of your destroyer or cruiser units anywhere on the board. Each can move to an adjacent empty non-home system. And then, in each destination system, you mark it as used from your reinforcement pool, not from your points. I don't know how big a deal that is. Certainly, if you're in a position to move into a couple of planets cheaply, but destroyers, and what else, cruisers aren't too bad, but you're not gonna, you might be able to damage someone who's got weak outposts or something, but I don't know how valuable the secondary ability is there either. Okay, the 7th one is technology, and this one of course excites the crap out of me because I'm into building up this technology tree and all that, and kind of looking forward to the expansions because probably they have more tech. Okay, the primary says you get a tech advance. You just pick one out of your deck, and as long as you have the right prerequisites, you have it. That sounds pretty good. The secondary ability is you spend a command counter from your strategy allocation, and you can spend, and you must spend 8 resources to get a tech advance, as long as you have the prerequisites. But here's where these little tech advantages come in play. They reduce that price by 1. Otherwise, though, you have to spend, out of trade goods or out of planets that you're expending in order to get these points. And in either way, other than those tech advantages, you're spending stuff that you could be building real forces with, right? And that's more how I'm used to technology advancing in a game like Stellar Conquest or something. You pay real money for it, so you have this hard decision. Here, one of the hard decisions is, hey, if I focus on technology, I just get a level for free. And 8 is the Imperial. You draw the top card from the objective deck, the public objective cards here, and you reveal it. Now, once those are revealed, and each person's secret objective is the same way, kind of, a player can take an objective during their status phase, I believe, by marking it with their little control flag, as long as they have the prerequisites. And those prerequisites may not be easy, but they're things you have to do on the board or in the game in order to get extra victory points. And you get victory points based on the particular card. For example, this one gives 2 cards, 2 points. The public ones, everybody can take once. If you meet the requirements, you can claim it once. And some of them require you to spend something to get it or whatever. Okay. The other thing you get when you play that Imperial option, other than revealing a card, which is pretty cool, but whatever, the other thing you get is you get 2 victory points. And that probably puts a limit on the length of play. Because each player, almost every turn, I would guess, somebody is going to take that Imperial option, and they're going to take their 2 victory points. Now, there's a card in the public objective deck, and this is divided into 2 decks, Stage 1 and Stage 2. In the Stage 2 set, that I believe ends the game in a sudden death. So, again, as people are dealing their way through that, there's a way that the game could just end immediately there. I don't know if the political cards, I know they can change the rules of the game fairly heavily, from what I understand. What's the secondary ability? You pay a command counter, as always, from your strategy allocation, and you immediately build units in one of your systems containing 1 or more friendly space docks, even if you already activated it. Building the units here doesn't activate the system. That's really cool. Now, you still have to pay your production there, but if you've got a single base that's a good building location, you don't have to move things forward as quickly. What do the big numbers on those things mean? The undefined now. Like I said before, I think they're order of play, but let's see. Yep. So, as you're playing your actions, they follow the numbers on here, as opposed to the clockwise, counterclockwise. You get to pick them in clockwise. Here's one thing for those of you who aren't used to me. I'll be playing it, everything counterclockwise that should be clockwise, which is just about everything else in the game. Picking those things, setting the planets up, all that. All that was done counterclockwise. And, wherever something should be clockwise, it'll be counter. No big deal there, right? It's just to confuse everyone. Okay. I think that's pretty much everything. And I'm really looking forward to trying this, but I'm a little worried about it. Not so much, so you're not going to get any great strategy from me here. This is a first play. What you're going to see is me kind of blundering through the game, probably making some mistakes, probably forgetting some rules. That's the way I do things. And some people find that enjoyable, some don't. If you don't find that enjoyable, you may want to still come back and listen to what my closing thoughts are in the review of the whole playthrough. Or you may just dislike me so much that you don't want to. But one thing to remember, though, I'm not someone who's a great fan of this game already. Although I'm excited by it, trying to sell you on it. I'm just chronicling my first look at it. And most of my vids are all in that nature. There are some that are games that I've had for a while, and those will get more frequent as this giant pile of new purchases disappears. But a lot of the games that I've been doing have been first looks, and this is one of them. All right, I hope some of you enjoy. Cheers.